Plato's cave is one of the most famous allegories in philosophy. I highly disagree with a lot of Plato's philosophy, but his allegory and his dialogues, obviously, and his writing was absolutely amazing. And the allegory of the cave, I feel, is definitely worth sort of thinking about. Let's explore it. Let's keep in mind that this was written 2,300 years ago. Very, very long time ago, obviously. So the story goes something like this. So imagine there's a cave that leads sort of deep into the earth, and at the very, very end of the cave, at the last wall, there are prisoners shackled by the feet and the neck, and they cannot turn their heads, they cannot look around or stand up. Behind them is a big, large fire, and in between them and the fire is a low wall where people walk and hold up different objects, such as statues or real objects like branches or cats and dogs and so on. And the only thing these prisoners see are the shadows cast by these objects onto the wall. Remember, they cannot turn their heads. So if this is your life since birth, the only thing you see are shadows, or representations of representations being portrayed on the wall in front of you. It is not impossible or too far-fetched to say that this is the reality that the prisoners are living. What they see in front of them, they perceive as real. They see an image of a dog or a horse or a cat, and the illusion, the shadow is, in their eyes and minds, reality. And they name those objects. And to name something is to define it, and to define something is to know what it is. But of course, shadows are not the actual representation, but the prisoners don't know this. Then Plato asks us to imagine that one of these prisoners are released, and he's forced, right? This is important. He's forced to turn around, and he's dragged up and out of the cave into the real world, into the light. Now you can imagine that if you've spent your entire life in the darkness of the cave, looking at the representations, the shadows, to be forced into the light, you would be blinded. You've never seen the sun, or you've never witnessed the brightness of the sun, so it would hurt your eyes, and you wouldn't be able to look at things and objects directly. You wouldn't be able to look at forms directly. You would hide in the shadows, perhaps only at night, and inspect things, or you would look into the reflections in the water, look at yourself, and then after a while you'll start looking at things in the way that they truly are, and it's a difficult process. And eventually you would look at the source of all creation and life itself, the sun. Now obviously you shouldn't look directly at the sun, we all know this, but metaphorically, the sun, not metaphorically, absolutely, the sun is the only reason we are alive, really. If it wasn't for the sun, no life would ever exist on the planet. But Plato, I'd say, it's sort of the knowledge and where the true source of knowledge and reality. And now Plato asks us to think, okay, so you've been forcefully pulled into the harsh light, and after your eyes have adjusted, what would you do? He argues, and I would argue the same thing, that you would feel compelled to go back down the cave. You'd want to go back down the cave, and you would want to relay this information to your fellow prisoners and tell them, listen, you are living a lie, essentially. But then also, we must ask ourselves, what happens if you go from very bright, like the light and something very bright, into the darkness? You would be blinded. And you reach your fellow prisoners and you tell them about this, and they might test you. They will say, okay, but this object passing in front of the fire, what is that? And you will not be able to answer because your eyes are darkened, because your eyes have adjusted to the light, and now you are in the darkness and you cannot see the dark shadows. And your fellow prisoners might call you mad and insane. And indeed, in Plato's dialogue, he says that if the prisoners were to be released, they would murder this person, because he's crazy, and he's obviously trying to do them harm in destroying what their idea of reality is. And this sort of comes to the end of the allegory of the cave and this thought of experiment. And you can really interpret it in so many different ways. You can ask yourself, so who are the prisoners? And in the dialogue itself, Glaucon says, wow, these are very strange, this is a strange situation you are explaining, Socrates. And Socrates replies, yes. And Glaucon says, and even stranger prisoners. And Socrates replies, yes, but not unlike us, or akin to us, or basically we are the prisoners. And then we can ask ourselves, who are these people holding up these forms and shapes that basically fool us? And you can ask, well, who are the influences? Surely it's the government, it's media, film, music, teachers, parents, a multitude of people. Those carriers of the shapes might not even realize that they are in between reality and illusion. And then also, even more interestingly, that Plato never mentions who this person is that unshackles the prisoner. And remember, the prisoner is forced to turn around and dragged up into the light and the mouth of the tunnel. Who's that person? Now, certainly to use force is not good. And, we can interpret this as well. But most probably, in this sort of scenario, it is the teacher, the lecturer, or the philosopher that is the person that is forcing other prisoners to go to the light. Perhaps the person that is unshackling and forcing and turning around and dragging the other people up to the light is a person that used to be a prisoner himself. Very interesting. I mean, this is sort of a loose interpretation that I'm doing on the fly, but the allegory is definitely worth thinking about, I think. Let me know what you think about it. Let me know in the comment section below, how do you interpret the allegory of the cave? And again, I will add a link to the allegory below, so go and read it, and yeah, let's have a discussion. It's very interesting. All right, thank you for listening. Goodbye.